There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
A hotel suite that in this instance serves as a den of crime. The aftermath of a rather minor event to be noted on a police blotter, an insurance claim, perhaps a 3-inch box on page 12 of the evening paper. Small addenda to be added to the list of the loot. A camera. A most unimposing addition to the flotsam and jetsam that it came with. Hardly worth mentioning, really, because cameras are cameras. Some expensive, some purchasable at 5 and dime stores. But this camera, this one's unusual. Because in just a moment, we'll watch it inject itself into the destinies of 3 people. It happens to be a fact that the pictures that it takes can only be developed in the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and joined once again by my co-host,
80s E, coming to you from the fifth dimension once again.
Once again, the fifth dimension. We're just trudging along right here through season 2 now. We're already up to episode 10. This will be a most unusual camera. But, Eric, before we start, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Eric, did you ever have a Polaroid camera growing up?
I did. That's one of my earliest memories of any kind of camera, yeah. I remember posing for Christmas pictures, and, yeah, I think it was my mom's, and she got it as a graduation gift, if I'm not mistaken. How about you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had one. You would click it, and the best part was sitting there shaking it, trying to get it to, develop in your hand. You know what I mean? It was just cool at the time. Now they even have, like, the little mini ones you could get to, like, put on your keychain and stuff. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Now, let me ask you this. Your Polaroid camera, my mom's, I don't know, it might have been worth some money now. I don't know if maybe not, but hers was old enough that you had to actually buy a strip of flash bulbs and stick it on top of the Polaroid camera.
I remember.
It didn't have a built-in flash bulb. You had to buy like a strip.
I remember those because they were like a brick, kind of like a Tetris brick you would put in there. But the bulbs would burn out once you use so many times. You'd have to replace that. But mine had the built-in flash, so that tells a little bit of difference between how old I am compared to how old your mom is, I guess, right?
Yeah. That was a crazy invention though back in. I guess it would have been like the 70s maybe when she got hers anyway. I don't know when they actually came out, but yeah, that's a cool little interesting note.
Right, and before we get too far in here, let me apologize for the last couple of weeks' episodes. It sounded like I was actually stuck in the fifth dimension in like a time vortex or a closet. I've been dealing with the ear infection. I go back to the doctor today, so hopefully we have everything worked out, the kinks worked out. We did some test runs. But yeah, last week's was almost as unbearable as Eric thought that the episode was to listen to. So here we go. Let's back on the wagon. Let's get on this, Eric. This is season 2, episode 10, A Most Unusual Camera.
All right. A Most Unusual Camera. This is the Twilight Zone, season number 2. This would be episode number 10. And it was directed by John Rich. Just a little aside note about John Rich. He was born on July 6th, 1925 in Rockaway Beach, Queens, New York City. He was the director and producer. This is pretty famous. I believe this is the only episode he directed. But he was the director and producer known for All in the Family, a big show, in 1971, The Dick Van Dyke Show, 1961, and a little lesser known one to me, On the Rocks, 1975. So big-time director here. Some pretty big television shows, iconic television shows in American television in the 60s and 70s. So John Rich. This episode was written by Rod Serling and its original air date was on December the 16th, 1960. And just by way of a small trivia question for you, Jimbo, on this day in history, this day being not the day that we're recording, but December the 16th, what major American event in 1773 on December the 16th happened? And I'll give you a little hint. It's best identified, I guess, by the phrase, no taxation without representation. Can you go back in your mind to your history class?
Well, absolutely.
And
I'm sure it is the Boston Tea Party, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
You're asking a history buff here, these simple questions.
All right. Well, I couldn't stump you on that one. So the Boston Tea Party, December 16th, 1773, for this day in history, also the date of the Twilight Zone episode in 1960. All right. So the total production cost for this particular episode was $39,607.47. And when we adjust that for inflation in today's dollars, again, kind of a running theme, it's about a tenfold increase. We're looking at $398,766.94 in today's dollars. So that'd be about a 906% increase. And as we stated before a couple of times, you probably couldn't even do 10 minutes of a television show now for $400,000. Jimbo, I don't know if you had any extras on. You do. You're shaking your head. You have extras on the total production cost, so take it away.
Absolutely. And I have a question for you as soon as I get to the end of this.
Okay.
The producer and secretary, there was a line for $1,775. The story and secretary. Here we go. Again, we see secretaries used in multiple lines of this budget. $2,630. The director got $1,250, which seems to be the normal of each of these episodes. The cast, $4,784.45. Unit manager and secretary, again, $100. Production fee, $825. Agents and commission, $2,500. Legal and accounting, $250. Below the line charges for MGM, $24,496.31. And below the line charges others was $996.71, which gave the total production cost, as Eric stated, as $39,607.47. So, Eric, I have a question. Do you think that some of this below the line charges or other charges that were given in these budgets for each episode was there anything in there for Rod Serling cigarettes? Or do you think it was just his own personal thing? Was it a tax write-off for it? You know what I mean? Did he get to put that into the budget?
I don't know. I think he was smoking. Was he smoking in this episode? I think he was, actually, yeah. You know what I noticed, though? He had a really cool watch on. I was trying to... I picked up on it. It had like a triangular-looking dial. It was really cool looking. I don't know what kind it was or anything, but I don't know why I noticed that.
But I think it's
really neat.
It's probably cool because about this episode, they are crooks, so maybe he just decided to put a little extra on him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, they picked this up.
Maybe, but as to the cigarettes, I don't know.
And can I say something? As far as unintelligent as these crooks seem to be, they are very intelligent when it comes to the stuff that they steal. You know what I mean? Because they're like, well, these two vases from the Ming Dynasty. And he's like, these aren't from the Ming Dynasty. You know, and he shatters them. You know what I mean? So obviously he knows a little bit about it.
Yeah, they probably were very familiar with the goods and whether they were good or not, or whether they were valuable, I guess, or not. Right. Yeah.
So let me go ahead and jump into the cast real quick. As Eric stated, we did have Fred Clark, who played Chester Diedrich. You may know him from Sunset Boulevard from 1950, where he played Sheldrake. But he was also in The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, where he played Alexander King. You had Jean Carson, who was Paula Diedrich. She played in The Party in 1968. And Eric, you probably know her from The Andy Griffith Show, where she played Daphne and Jaylene Naomi Connors in 4 episodes.
Let me just interject. If you want to do yourself a favor, go and watch the 2 episodes. I think one of them's called like Fun Girls, when Andy and Barney meet them for the first time. And Jean Carson is part of a duo team of they're going on dates and stuff. That is a hilarious episode. It's iconic for the Andy Griffith show, but yeah.
That's a different podcast, Eric. That's a different podcast.
Yeah, we'll do that one down the line.
What did you think of her voice?
Oh, it's like so unique. I don't know that I can just off the top of my head, think of anybody who, as a female, she had a really, really maybe baritone type voice.
It's almost like she smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day or something. She had that.
Yeah.
I guess the person that I would most consider her close to would probably be the lady that played in Spaceballs, the robot. What's her name?
Oh, yeah. That's not coming to my head.
Joan Rivers, I think.
Oh, yeah, Joan Rivers. Yeah, but I think, very deep voice.
I think she could have got a lot more roles with that voice, especially in like cartoons and stuff. I think she would have been really good in some of that, but I couldn't find anything where she did anything like that. So next we have Adam Williams, who played Woodward, who reminds me of Eric a lot. He was in North by Northwest. But Eric, what famous Twilight Zone was he in that you have seen in season 1?
Come on.
Do you know
The
it?
Hitchhiker.
The Hitchhiker. Where
he was
played the sailor.
Hitchhiker.
Right. Well, I just want to make sure because I you know. Then you had Marcel Hilary, where he played Pierre the waiter. He was in Sabrina in 1954, where he played the professor. You had Franklin Farnham, who was man at the racetrack, who was uncredited. He was in Sunset Boulevard, where he played the Undertaker, not the WWE, the Undertaker wrestler, but the Undertaker in the movie. Art Lewis was the racetrack tout, who was uncredited. He also played a drunk in another episode of The Twilight Zone, but he was also in Hot Stuff in 1979. You had Tony Reagan, who was the man at the racetrack, who was also uncredited. He was in Quincy M.E. in 1976. He also started several of the Perry Mason episodes. And yes, last but not least, you still have Rod Serling, who is the narrator and the host, who is uncredited for all the Twilight Zones so far. And probably till the end of the season or series. So there you have the cast for A Most Unusual Camera.
All right, let me jump right into the plot of this episode. I'll take over from here. A married couple, Chester and Paula, have broken into and robbed a curio shop, hoping to sell the loot for a handsome sum of money. Unfortunately, all of it turns out to be junk or fakes. All that is, save for a mysterious camera. When they try taking a picture, it turns out to be from 5 minutes into... it turns out to be from 5 minutes into the future. That sentence doesn't sound right. But anyway, soon Paula's brother Woodward joins them, and the three decide to use the camera at a horse track to win it big. So,
and they do win it big.
Plot. They do in the beginning. Yes, they do. Did you think? I don't know. I kind of have a question. I guess I'll save it for the end. I tend to jump ahead, but like, would there be any other good uses? I'll just throw that question out into the nebulous. What else would you use it for? I guess other than gambling and betting. I was trying to rack my brain, but I'm sure there are some cool things.
That was one of my questions at the end. It's a simple story, but I wish they would have done more with the camera. You know what I mean? Not just to get rich quick. I think they could have done a lot more. Can you imagine, let's say, taking a picture, and I'll just use this as an example because it hadn't happened yet, but let's say the JFK assassination or something, you know what I mean, took a picture and trying to... I'm not saying, because that happened years later, but I'm just saying something like that, maybe like the man going to the moon or something, you know, or an explosion or a war or something like that, Adolf Hitler, something like that they could have intertwined in here. Even though this was a simple story and I enjoyed it, I wish they would have done more, so...
Yeah, that's a good thought. Like, if they could have woven some big historical event in there,
right?
You know, and took the picture, and then they knew like what catastrophe was going to happen like 5 minutes later, and they knew about it beforehand.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool. And here we have the opening scene, and Rod's monologue is really early in this particular episode. I thought it was cool in the scene where he's standing in front of a mirror, he's smoking a cigarette like Jimbo said earlier, and he's got his cool watch on like I noticed. And in the reflection of the mirror, Chester and Paula are frozen, like, and he's standing and delivering his monologue. Kind of different in that he's so early as opposed to, I think the last episode, he didn't come in until almost 7 minutes, or that was, the episode before the last one. So they're in a $28 hotel room, right?
Yep.
And they've just completed a heist.
And I do believe that the trailer at the end of the last episode said it was a $40 a day room or whatever. So I think there's a little bit
there
of...
was an error.
I think so.
Yeah, a little bit of an error there. So Chester is going through the hall, and he's, like Jimbo mentioned early in our episode, he picks up 2 vases. Well, actually, Paula's reading a newspaper article recounting the robbery of the curio shop, and they're sort of getting their kicks and jollies because they pulled off this heist, and they're reading about their own heist in the newspaper, and they're kind of chuckling about it. And Chester picks up those 2 aforementioned vases and vases from the Ming Dynasty, because that's what Paula reads out of the article, and he's like, these are junk, and he throws them down and smashes them and whatever. And it has this episode is more lighthearted. We've talked about it before, like when the Twilight Zone tries to do comedy a little bit, it doesn't thrive as well as when they do science fiction and time travel and all that stuff. It's not as good, and you kind of get that a little bit of that feeling early on in the episode, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it sound not the monologue, the dialogue kind of sounds like an old gangster movie, like Johnny. Well, that's not really old. Like Johnny Dangerous, like, hey, come on, what are you doing, guy? Like that kind of dialogue between Paula and Chester. But they're playing it up because they're like crooks and stuff. And so, where do we go from here, Jimbo? Do you have any trivia as far as anything that jumps out, or anything that jumps out?
Not yet. I'll have some stuff here in a little bit. I will say this right here. This did inspire the Goosebumps books. You remember the Goosebumps books there, Eric?
I remember the covers. I don't know if I ever read any of them.
They inspired the Say Cheese and Die book, as well as the sequel Say Cheese and Die Again. So just
okay. So they're going over initially the camera. Initially, Chester thinks it's junk, and he's like, you can't even load the film anywhere in here. This thing's, a piece of junk. And he's sort of like, I don't know, he's kind of scolding, or he's kind of giving it to Paula, like, you case this place. And they're kind of arguing back and forth, which is what they do. They argue back and forth, and they're each is blaming the other for why they decided to case this curio shop, and there's not a whole lot of valuable stuff. And that's kind of the initial scenes until Chester decides that he tells Paula to go stand over by the window, and he's going to take her picture with this most unusual camera. And he's like, look, this thing doesn't even work. It's not even, the picture doesn't come out right away. But when it does, after they've kind of put it down, and once the picture comes out, Chester takes a look at it, and it's very unusual, because after a minute and taking a double take, he's like, you have a fur coat on.
Yeah,
but she doesn't recognize it, because, well, I guess I should back up. In the initial scenes, she just goes and stands by the window, and she's got a nice dress on. And then he takes the picture, and he's looking at it, he's staring at it, he's like, tell me what's different about this. And she's finally like, oh, I don't have a fur coat or whatever. And then after that, they go over to this chest that they stole. It has a lock on it. Chester takes his knife out, and he pops the lock off. And lo and behold, inside the chest, the wooden box or whatever, there's a nice, beautiful fur coat. And Paula takes it out and is like, oh, this is mine. This is mine. And then goes over by the window, and then after about 5 minutes or so, she, has the full coat on and everything, and she makes the exact same pose that was in the picture, and that throws Chester for a loop. Let me look at it and see if I have anything. Oh, I had something as well, I don't have it in front of me, but apparently in the original script, a switchblade knife was supposed to be used in the scene, because he uses a knife to break open the chest or whatever. And so CBS wrote back to Rod in a memo and requested that he change, a couple of changes. I'll read the other changes as we come to them. But he requested that they change it from a switchblade knife, which was illegal back in 1962, just a regular jack blade knife. And that was one of the requests that CBS made. because it was illegal, I guess, to have a switchblade knife. Jimbo, anything?
No, but this was originally going to be in season 1. It was actually
right.
What does it say here? Let me get back right here where I was reading this. Rod Serling completed the first draft of the script by April 23rd, 1959, labeled script number 6. So I don't know if that means it was actually going to be number 6 of the season 1, with the intention of filming for the first season. On April 29, 1959, CBS sent Bill Self, Buck Houghton, and Serling a report asking for a number of changes, which Eric has already alluded to one, and we'll get to the other ones as we come to it. So I think it's very interesting that this could have fit right in with season 1, and it could have been as early as episode number 6.
Yeah, I think it was in abeyance or something, is what I read. It kind of sat on the shelf for, a season or until the second season. But I have the other items here that CBS wanted to change. I'll go ahead and throw them in right here. The switchblade knives being illegal weapons. We already talked about that. Their use on a television drama is contrary to CBS policy. Please substitute a jackknife or a fixed blade knife in this scene. Serling also made the appropriate change. The first change that they wanted, let me back up into the paragraph, was to remove the word frog from Chester's comments referring to the French waiter. And I didn't know that was a derogatory term until I looked it up. And so I'll give you a little, answer to why are French people called frogs. And the reason why, this is from grammarhow.com, the reason why the French are called frogs are possibly due to them eating frog legs as a delicacy. It could relate to the wet, marshy land of the Low Countries. I can't pronounce that French word. It's called a hamlet outside of Paris. Apparently, it's like a really marshy area. And it may be a reference to the counter-revolutionaries in the French Revolution. I think there were counter-revolutionaries who, if I remember correctly, on their flags, and they wore patches on their uniforms, they were a depiction of a frog on their patches and on the flags that they use. So that's why French people are called frogs as a derogatory term.
Eric, I have a question for you. Do you remember the Warner Brothers frog, the "Hello, my baby, hello, my darling"? Hello?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the one guy that gets him. Remember, and he just stands up on the stage. He wants to be famous, and then he's just like ribbit. He doesn't do anything.
Yeah, just croaks.
Was that guy French?
Dude, you're really testing my memory today.
That just clicked in my head for some reason. I remember him.
Yeah.
I remember him being like the tuxedo and everything. I just didn't remember if it was set in France or not. I can't remember. It might be New York City.
Yeah,
so I'm not sure.
Might have been. I'd have to go back and look. The third and final thing that the request that CBS made was to please refrain the coronary histrionics so as to avoid horrifying or frightening the audience in a particular way. Those among it who might have a heart condition themselves. The coronary scene was replaced with the now oblivious window scene.
Right, and I don't know how that would have worked.
Yeah, I don't know either, but apparently maybe they all had heart attacks and they died. After they saw the picture, maybe they had heart attacks and they didn't want to, I don't know, the horrifying and frighteningness of having a heart attack. They didn't want to maybe trigger people who had heart problems in the episode, so they decided to change it to them falling out the window. But apparently that was in the original script, and CBS took it, requested that Rod take it out, and he obliged them. So, back to the episode. Nothing really sticks out. As far as, I guess we need to plug the plot point here. Once they figure out that this is a quote-unquote most unusual camera, at first, Chester decides that he's going to, be, what's the word I'm looking for? That he's going to be a philanthropist of sorts, and he's going to give this camera to science and the world, and he's going to make the world a better place. And Paul's like, well, what has the world ever done for us? Or humanity, what has humanity ever done for us? And I guess I do need to back up before this.
Yeah, you do.
We're introduced to Woodward. Sorry, I'm getting out of order a little bit.
Well, you even got to go back further than that, because the picture that was taken of what's her name, Paula, It's bothered Chester, dude. He can't sleep. He's sitting up there in the middle of the night, you know what I mean? And she wakes up and she's like, what are you doing? He's like, she's like, it's going to drive you crazy. She said, here, let me take this camera and I'll prove to you that it was just a fluke. It was just a once of and she takes a picture of the door. And she says, see, you know what I mean? And so it develops, ding, it comes up and pulls out and it's a picture of Woodward. Well, she's shocked and he's shocked because Woodward's in jail for some sort of crime, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's not too long after that, the old Woodward walks through the door.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in jail for like 9 years, and he broke out. Woodward comes in and, hey guys, and he says, me and my buddy broke out, and we snuck out through the laundry. They broke out of jail, and he's standing in the doorway, which leads me to one of my questions and observations. All right. So, if they were in a hotel, a $28 hotel room, how did Woodward not only know where they were at if he was in jail to show up at the hotel room, but then he knew exactly what room that they were in if he was in jail? So that's kind of maybe a little bit of a lost plot point there.
Exactly.
That didn't really add up with me. They probably, I don't know, they just, like, it didn't make sense how he would just automatically show up there. But let's meet our two leading characters, like, they are Gene Carson and Fred Clark. I got a little interesting story how they met Rod Serling here. It says, Fred Clark and Serling met at a restaurant one afternoon, and it was this chance meeting that led to Clark being cast for this episode. Gene Carson never played the lead on a television series. She had no problem playing a supporting role on shows like The Twilight Zone. That doesn't bother me, Carson recalled to a trade column at the time. With my crazy voice, I could never be a leading lady, so why would I kill myself trying? Besides, as second tomato, I have the reward of always being busy. I don't have to sit around for months waiting for a few big jobs that come up. I know stars who absolutely go crazy and out of their minds with inactivity. I was cast for The Twilight Zone because Rod Serling wanted me to play the lead in one of his scripts, Carson recalled. There was a party near Malibu. I was surprised to learn that he had seen me perform on stage in Mrs. Gibbons' Boys. I told him I was definitely interested in being new, and while being new to the West Coast, the producer phoned me almost 2 years later telling me Rod was fulfilling his promise. And that comes from the Martin Grahams Jr. book, The Twilight Zone, Unlocking a Door to a Television Classic. So that's kind of cool. Once again, we see Rod just being a good guy and keeping his word. And so that just, again, shows, as we've seen over a couple of episodes now, as we read some background on these episodes, that he was a man of character, and he promised Gene Carson a role in one of the episodes, and he came through for her. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yep.
Anything else as we jump back in the episode?
I don't know, but I really like Woodward in this episode. He brings a little bit of comic relief. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it's a pretty lighthearted episode for sure. Now, from here, once we're back in the apartment, Woodward and the three amigos, I guess if you could call them, all three together, they're sitting and they're trying to decide what to do with the camera. Woodward sits down and he decides he's going to watch a horse race on TV.
Well, Chester tells him to turn on the TV.
Yeah, like, get out of here, go watch TV or something, something like that. And so he goes and he's watching the horse race, and that, of course, triggers a light bulb in Chester's mind, and he comes up with this grand scheme and this great idea that they're going to go to the horse track and they're going to bet on the horses, and the way they're going to do it is they're going to take a picture of the scoreboard 5 minutes before the end of the race, or prior to the race even being run, and they decide that, or he decides, and he's trying to describe this idea to the other two,
right? And
they're going to make a lot of money.
And I believe before he turned on the TV, is this where he says, "I'm going to give this to the world" and all that? Because I was watching something else, and there's where he says, "Here, world, a gift I have for the world." And then Woodward's like, "Well, what about me?" He's like, "Yeah, you too, Woodward." But then he starts again, and he's like, "Here, world." Once he says "Here, world" the second time, if you listen closely, there is an echo where it'll say "Here World Again," which it's been missed by the production department on that stage. You can hear the echo, kind of like Eric probably heard an echo last week, or when we've tried to do some of these recordings, I'll say something and then Eric hears it again. But I thought that was very cool. Even on the Blu-ray, you can hear it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that. That's a pretty cool little thing. Apparently the production people caught that little, or they didn't catch that little echo. That can be frustrating. I know from experience, going through all the audio and trying to get everything to kind of sound at least somewhat presentable. So that's kind of comforting to know that a high production show like the Twilight Zone even missed a few things.
Right.
So once we get to the racetrack, right, we'll go ahead and fast forward to the racetrack. They're there. They got the camera set up, and I have this. This leads me to another trivia point. So before they go to the racetrack, they gather up all the money they have, and they have around $200 or $210, right? So here's a little bit of trivia as far as that goes. The horse pays $47.60 for a $2 bet. So they have around $200 to bet. When the horse wins, he says $9,500. This is Chester says $9,500. It's actually around $4,760. So it was a little bit of a miscalculation there on the money. So it would have actually been about $47.60 as opposed to $9,500 if they were betting $200, and it's a $2 bet for the horse to win $47.60. So that was one little minor error in the episode. Again, we already talked about how Chester and Paula were staying in a hotel suite, but yet somehow Woodward knew where they were, including the room. So this goes on and on. They take a few pictures of a few races at the racetrack. They win big. I mean, they're loaded down. They come back to the hotel suite, and they got gobs and gobs of money, suitcase money. It always bothers me, too, I know this was in the 1960s. I'll just go back to a small minor detail, but when they use fake money, stage money, it's come on, this is clown-looking money. It looks like Monopoly money when the cashier's handing them all the money.
But you don't know what kind of money is used in the Twilight Zone, Eric. It could be true.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So they end up back at the hotel room, and they are soaking it all in. They got champagne or wine bottles popped open, and in comes the hotel waiter. Well,
not yet, but you got to remember Chester's on the phone, and he's talking to some car dealership, remember? And he's like, no, I didn't say I wanted a black. It's got to be yellow with black interior. He's like, well, how much will that set me back? He's like, $11,000. He's like, well, no, that's not a problem. He's like, I'm just trying to decide if I want two of them. What I mean?
Yeah.
And I did the inflation on this. Even the $220 that they had to bet with, it came out to $2,400 that they could have bet. So the $11,000 was equal to $102,000 or something to purchase the cars. I had pictures of it, but obviously we are over a phone call, so I can't pull them up. But I thought that was very interesting. And he's putting it all in the suitcase.
Yeah, so
and Woodward's just over there eating chicken legs or something.
Yeah. They hauled in the loot, and they're basking in the glow of their winnings. When I'll come back to the waiter again, he comes in and he says, he looks at the camera and he picks it up, and Woodward goes, "Put that down." And then Chester's like, "I'll just let him look at it." And so the waiter notices. And he happens to be French, by the way. He happens to notice that there's an inscription on the front of the camera. And the inscription reads, pardon my French, if you will, "De la propriétaire." De la propriétaire, which translate in English 10 per owner, i.e. 10 photographs per owner. This is actually a grammatical error, for it actually means 10 to the female owner. Nouns are gender-specific in France. La always implies female. Masculine is considered inclusive for anyone. Therefore, it should have read "de au propriétaire," A-U, instead of la propriétaire. So that's just a little interesting side note. But anyway, all of that to say that they suddenly realize that there are only 10 pictures in this camera. And once the 10 pictures are up, I guess that's it. They don't know because there's no way to load any film. And then they start trying to recount back in their mind, like, oh man, how many pictures? Oh, we took 2 pictures before, then 6 pictures at the racetrack or whatever, and they start counting them up, and they realize that they only have 2 pictures left. And then they begin to argue about how they're going to dispense of the last 2 pictures. And then a struggle ensues, like all 3 of them have their hands on the camera. And one, I think Paula says, no, we need to save it for a rainy day. And Chester says, no, we need to go back to the racetrack and take another picture and win some more money. And I forget what Woodward says, probably something ridiculous. And they're struggling back and forth with it. And then they accidentally, hit the button again while they're struggling to take the camera away. And it takes a picture of Paula, a frightened picture of Paula. So, of course, they all, again, make their best guess of, why is she afraid? Like Chester says, well, she's afraid because, her brother is going to try to hurt her husband, and then they start arguing again, and which, again, I don't know, would the heart attack scene probably fit better in this? I can kind of see how it might have, because when they see the picture, they get frightened and they have a heart attack. And Paul has already said palpitations throughout the episode. But the whole window of them just like, I guess the fight, Chester and Woodward fighting, Chester pulls out his knife and then they fall out the window. That I can kind of see. But the last 2,
the whole, let's go ahead and just pull out a knife and start fighting just got to me, you know what I mean? Why did we go straight from, you've seen the picture, what happens. I mean, it could have been her acting like that because they dropped a champagne glass or something, but they went straight to, oh, you're trying to kill me, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's I think it's a look at greed and how money turns you on, will turn on each other, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. So, the waiter, by the way, what's this guy's name? I've already forgotten the guy that plays the waiter. He did a really good job. Marcel Hilaire. Yeah, he really plays it up, the swarmy waiter here, because he comes back in after the 2 fall out the window, and he's got like a laundry bag, and he's like, I'm here to take the laundry.
But I think it's also interesting.
I'm here to clean you out.
It's also interesting that, what's her name, Paula, that she doesn't mourn for very long, you know what I mean? She's like, she's distraught, then she's just like, oh well, starts gathering money and everything.
Yeah, that was a great comedic part. Like, she got over it really
real quick.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh well, life must go on. These things happen, and she's filing her money in, and then the waiter comes in and he robs her, and
yeah, she's like, I'm gonna call the police. He's like, go ahead. You're the one that's robbed all these places.
Yeah. And so another picture in the passage of time gets taken.
No, she takes it.
Does she take it?
She goes over to the window and takes a picture of him out that fell in the
for posterity, right. And then, I don't know if there's another picture or not.
No, it's the same one. It doesn't come out yet. Pierre, it comes out when Pierre's talking to her.
That's right. You got it. When the picture finally comes out, Pierre takes it and he notices, or he tells her that there's more than 2 bodies down there.
Now, I got a question. This is the question that bothers me for this episode. He looks at the picture and he says there's more than 2 bodies. Dude, if there's 3 bodies out there or 4 bodies out there, you know how many bodies are out there. Why do you go
to the window?
Right. Well, not only that, but if there's more than 2 bodies, you've obviously looked at the picture, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you would have known the difference between 3 and 4. That's the part that got me on this episode. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I can kind of see how they led Paula to fall out the window because she tripped on the
That was funny, too.
to the floor. But...
Well, because she ran over there to see. He's like, whoa. There's more than 2 people in this picture. He doesn't say there's 4 people. He doesn't say there's 3 people. He says there's more than 2. And she rushes over there, and she trips over that cord or rug or whatever, falls out the window. But, then you've got the great Pierre. He's like, you basically you should know. And he's like, look at this. He's like, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then drops the camera. And then you hear a scream. Oh, you know what I mean? So my question to you is, Eric, I guess he would have had to have fell out the window because the camera said that there were 4 people on the thing. So I can't really say that the heart attack thing played in. I was going to ask you, do you think he had a heart attack? But now that I'm thinking it through myself, the camera said there was 4 people outside, so he had to have fallen out the window. So he couldn't have had the heart attack because he's not going to scream if he's having a heart attack. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. That kind of does make sense to me. Like if he had a heart attack and fell out. I don't know. You know, it doesn't give us that information. That he just the camera sort of pans to the floor where the camera lands.
The camera is right.
They don't really show him falling out while like they showed the other three falling out the window. The waiter Pierre or whatever, he's not shown on camera.
And I like that, man.
Yeah.
It leaves it up to the viewer discretion. I like that because they don't give you the answer.
Yeah.
It's the Twilight Zone.
Yep, exactly. Any questions or observations?
No, I already talked about that. I talked about the 3 people in the photo, then the 4 people, and then how they. But I'm going to read this real quick. In May of 1960, Blanche Gaines, Serling's former agent, submitted a short story titled "The Latest Thing in Cameras" by James Blumgarden. Serling rejected the story proposal on the grounds that it duplicated, in essence, this script, which had been written for almost a year before, even though the episode had not gone before the cameras yet, and a revised script from the year before had been completed days before receiving Gaines's submission. In the early draft, Serling had a brief scene in the script with the antique store owner and his wife complaining to a detective about the robbery. The revision, however, did not feature this scene. Serling had deleted it because the cost involved in creating another set and hiring at least 3 more actors for additional roles would not have been practical. CBS, during production of the second season, was pressuring both Serling and Hound about keeping the cost down, so Serling obliged for the sake of the network. Quote, "A series can be sustained with top-quality writing and acting, but suffers when filmed from economics," Serling commented. "It's rare that a show can shoot in more than 3 days, and it is this too brief shooting schedule that is reflected in the lack of consistency in film shows. This is particularly true in anthologies. When the Twilight Zone came up with a rock on occasion, this was occasionally the net result of sloppy writing, but more often it reflected a lack of time to polish the show properly." So he even admitted that some of the episodes were rocks. You know what I mean? Where they weren't as good as the other ones.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes back again to the fact that he was frustrated with the network and not giving him the money that... Because I guess in this episode, there was supposed to be another scene added to the beginning, maybe? Like a clerk in... Maybe, was it that one? I might be getting mixed up with another episode, but they wanted to put an extra scene in, but it would have cost too much money with hiring actors and sets and stuff like that. So, here's a question that I had. I've got 3 bullet points for questions and observations, and I'll throw them out and see what you think. It seems to me if they won over and over at the racetrack that they might attract some attention, no?
Right.
Like, that was one of the things, the people sitting behind him, I was, like, waiting for one of them to be, like, a cop or the episode to take a turn, like they would have got caught for gambling.
Well, I was even watching one of the guys where Chester goes running out to get the money, you know what I mean? He's like, oh, wow, you know, this guy's just basically shoving me out of the way, you know what I mean? I was waiting for them to knock the camera off, you know what I mean? Because it was sitting on the ledge.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought it would be funny if it knocked off, you know, somebody else picked it up. That would have been a great way to end it, too, you know what I mean? But I thought that was what I was waiting for.
Yeah, I'm just like, all right, you're in there, you're winning all this money, you know, winning every single race, you know, and they got this weird-looking camera that they wouldn't attract a little bit of attention to themselves. Crime doesn't pay. I put in this lighthearted tale, the criminals weren't morally good, but they were likable.
Yeah.
You know, I really like that.
Well, crime does pay, but...
It does.
But if you get caught...
in the end.
But if you get caught, it doesn't pay.
Or you fall out a window.
Right.
I just put the Twilight Zone karma has a way of giving criminals what they deserve and being a little more gracious to people like Templeton in our previous episode. And then I had this question for you, Jimbo. We've kind of already thrown this out earlier, but if you had the most unusual camera, what would you take a picture of? And you said big historical events, major catastrophes that might be avoided if you had.
But if you have
knowledge.
the camera, you're not going to know that it's a historical event until after it happens.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But also, it's almost like the camera takes a picture when it wants to. I don't think it was necessarily them taking the picture. You know what I mean? Because if you look at it, he's like, there's no buttons, there's nowhere to load film and all that. So I don't think that they ever actually, like, even when she went out to the window, I don't know if she actually ever took the picture. I think the camera just took the picture on its own.
I'll do you one further. If you look closely, someone notated this. I think it was an IMDb comment, made a notation that in the struggle, when there are three of them are struggling for the camera, and then it takes the picture, no one's finger is actually on the button. There is a button on the side,
right,
but no one's finger is on the button when you zoom in. And I was like, yeah. So that you bring up a good point. Maybe the picture it has a mind of its own, and it takes a picture when it wants to.
Yep.
Anything else? I've got a surprise for you at the end, but go ahead if you got anything else.
Well, no, I'll wait for my closing comments to propose what I have.
Okay, well, I have closing comments too, but I guess it'll be kind of a tradition going forward for these lighthearted episodes like Mr. Beavis. I actually wrote another poem about this episode, so we can do it now, or just give. You want to give our rating?
Let's give our final thoughts and ratings, and then we'll close with you giving your A to Z poem.
It's not good, but we can't break tradition. So this episode, it is lighthearted, like we've mentioned before. It's more comedic, and most of the time, the Twilight Zone doesn't do well in the comedy vein. But this one, out of the three, I think, that we've seen so far, when I compare it to the Mighty Casey, it's better than that one, and just slightly better than Mr. Beavis. Mr. Beavis kind of holds a place in my heart because it was such a kind-hearted, good story. But it wasn't good, like it wasn't funny. But this one is definitely, again, the characters are, they're good characters. It was well acted, as far as I'm concerned. But I wouldn't say it was a great episode. It's one of those middle-of-the-road ones for me. I think the Twilight Zone does a lot better when they stick to what they're good at. And I'd probably put it like at a 6 if I had to rate it. IMDb has it at what, Jimbo? What'd you say?
I think it was a 7 the last time I looked.
7. What's your thoughts? Where do you rate it? Where's it rank?
Well, like I said, this is a simple story. I would have loved to have seen it something more iconic than just going to the racetrack. I wouldn't have cared if they went to the racetrack, let's say, for a little bit and got this huge amount of monies where, like, now they can, like, be owners of NASA or something. You know what I mean? Just something crazy. And maybe have, the man on the moon or whatever. But what I do like about this episode, at the ending, it's an open-ended story. The French waiter does say it's 10 pictures per owner. My question to you, for one, is there was 3 owners. So you had Chester, you had Woodward, and you had Paula. So that should have been 30 pictures they would have been guaranteed. Okay? My second thing is, with the open-ended story, I like that because it gives me a flashback to an episode earlier in season 2. I think it was episode 2, the Genie in a Bottle episode. If you remember, at the end of that, basically they break the bottle or whatever, they throw it in the trash outside, and it comes back together for the next owner. I like how this one, the camera drops to the floor, so the maid or whoever that comes in that cleans this is going to pick up the camera, and it's going to keep on going and going and going. And I like that. So for me, I enjoyed the episode. It was well acted. It was hilarious at times. Woodward stole the show. Paula with her voice. Chester with his over-the-top, wants to save the world. I'd probably give it a 7.5. I think it was very well done, and I like the open-ended. And when you do the Twilight Zone, some of their more famous episodes are really dramatic. They have these big, huge twists. There's not a lot of comedy in them, and I think that this is a fun episode where you can sit back and watch. You can laugh. I just think Pierre's pretty funny at the end when he's like, "Oh no, there's 4," and he falls out the window. Well, we know he falls out the window, but we don't know what happened to him or if he pushed, tripped, or whatever. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to give it a 7.5. So, Eric, let's hear this poem. What was the last poem that you did? Do you remember?
Mr. Beavis.
Oh, was that the last one?
Which was another comedic. Yeah, another comedic.
Is this your second one then that you've ever done?
Yeah, this is only the second one. This is not going to be anywhere. I took a lot more time with the Mr. Beavis one, but just to bring up, you need You brought up an interesting point, and then I'll read the poem. We call them like the palate cleansers, because you can't have all these heavy, dark, twisting big twist episodes. You got to have something in the middle to kind of break it up. And this was a lighthearted episode. I thought it was fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. So I'll just read this poem here as we close out our episode. It goes like this: 3's a company, but 4 is a crowd. Be careful when greedy waiters are around. A most unusual camera brought about great fortune until each tried to steal the other one's portion. A gift for humanity. Now that was a classic. Earned a stern rebuttal. Is there a leak in your attic? 2 fell out the window while 1 screamed aloud. 2 more would follow. 3's company, but 4 is a crowd. So there you go.
Well done. Well done. Maybe Eric, once we're done with these series, he will publish a book with all of his Twilight Zone poems.
Yeah, right.
So there you have it. That is a most unusual camera. Next week, Christmas time is right around the corner. Actually, just a couple of days away now. We will be talking about one of Eric's favorites, A Night of the Meek, starring the great Art Carney from Honeymooners fame. So if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. Follow us on the Tragedy of Cinema podcast page on Facebook. We have a lot of fun on there. If you want to email us, thetragedyofcinema@gmail.com. But Eric, I think that's about all I got. Do you have anything else?
Did you want to plug the Christmas episode?
Absolutely. Also coming out probably next week, right? Probably whenever Tim Mullins gets it done, which he actually texted me while we were recording this. I said, dude, I'm in the middle of recording a Twilight Zone episode. He's like, oh, sorry, tell everybody I said hi. So everybody, Tim Mullins says hi from the Hillbilly Horror House. If you haven't checked out his podcast, do it. I do play Danny. I'm a voice actor. It's a lot of fun in there, too. So season 2, we're having a lot of fun with that. So go give him a check out and give him a review, too. So, but yes, we will be having our 3rd annual It's a Wonderful Podcast Life with some of our fellow podcasters and friends. So hopefully everyone will have a safe and Merry Christmas and get a little extra podcasting listening time and some time off work. So with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
Object known as a camera. Vintage uncertain, origin unknown. But for the greedy, the avaricious, the fleet of foot, who can run a 4-minute mile so long as they're chasing a fast buck. It makes believe that it's in a lie. But it isn't at all. It's a beckoning come-on for a quick walk around the block in the Twilight Zone.